Hi, this is Josh Kulp for Daf Shevui. We're learning Masechet Avodah Zarah, and we are up to Daf Kaftet. And as I've been doing the past couple weeks, I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview as to what you're going to see on this Daf. So the first thing is the Gemara continues with the issues of what foods are healthy, what foods are not healthy. We've had quite a bit of material about this. I think I've spoken enough about how later sages, for the most part, did not take these to be mandatory. I will note that I'm reading a book. I was reading a book on Shabbat called The Story of Hebrew. And very interestingly, this is a side note to what we're learning in the Gemara, but Jews were very, very heavily involved in the medical field in the 9th, 10th, and 11th centuries, and were a conduit in translating Arabic books into Christian, and that in some even Christian medical schools in the Middle Ages, the official instruction was in Hebrew. We know that there were many famous doctors such as the Rambam, but I never really realized the extent to which how many books of Greek and Arabic medicine had been translated into Hebrew, and at the time the Jews were seemingly the world experts in medicine. So that's an interesting tidbit. I don't think that a lot of those relied on Talmudic medicine. I think that my impression is that they were relying more on Greek and Roman medicine and translating that into Hebrew. Anyway, the Talmud moves on. There is a sugya about hair cutting, about whether or not a non-Jew can cut the hair of a Jew and a Jew can cut the hair of a non-Jew. So as with the other issues, the fear was that the non-Jew would murder the Jew. He's got a razor or scissors in his hand, dangerous instruments. And when it comes to the Jew cutting the hair of a non-Jew, there's generally no problem, except there are parts of the non-Jewish hair that are left for idolatrous purposes. So the Jew would have to avoid engaging in sort of shaping up someone's hairdo to be more acceptable to his idols. And then finally, the Mishnah turns to something totally new, a real break in the earlier subject, and it lists a whole bunch of substances that are prohibited to derive benefit from them. Now, we're going to see several lists in the next couple of Mishnah. There's going to be some long lists, and they're divided up between what in Hebrew we call Isur Hana'ah and Isur Achila. So Isur Hana'ah means one cannot derive any benefit from it. An example of this from another field is a milk and meat. So if you cook together a hamburger and cheese, you're not allowed to sell that to anyone. Technically speaking, that is a prohibition. It's called a prohibition of deriving benefit, an Isur Hana. In contrast, something like pig meat or a non-kosher hamburger is only an Isur Achila. I can't eat it, but for instance, I can play football with a football made of pigskin or made of with the hides of an animal that weren't kosherly slaughtered. I can wear shoes with hides of the animal that weren't kosherly slaughtered, etc. The only thing I can't do is eat that. I can sell it. I can give it to my dogs. I can do whatever I want with it. I can't eat it. Okay, so this Mishnah is lists of Isur Hana'ah, prohibitions of deriving benefit. Most of them are things that may have been involved in idolatrous worship. Jews may not derive any benefit from idolatrous worship. So most of the things in this Mishnah are forbidden because of idolatrous worship. However, there are some things, specifically food, where there are variant traditions as to why Jews don't eat them, and we're going to spend a lot of time throughout this Masechet talking about them. The example in this Mishnah is cheese, and there seems to be a debate between the two rabbis. It's a very difficult, puzzling literally a puzzle of a Mishnah. Is cheese forbidden because the rabbis wanted to get Jews and non-Jews away from eating together? And as such, in general, processed foods were prohibited, namely cheese and wine and bread oil too. Meat had another issue because meat, there's a kashrut status there. But cheese, bread, wine, and oil, which generally speaking do not have any unkosher ingredients? Or are they prohibited merely because of forbidden ingredients, in which case, as long as we can ascertain that the cheese was made with kosher ingredients, Jews can eat non-kosher cheese? That's going to be, let's say, a polarity that we explore throughout the rest of the Masechet. And it's going to come up especially within special intensity with the wine prohibition. Wine has no forbidden ingredients in it, so the polarity there is, are we not supposed to drink wine that comes from non-Jews because we're meant to refrain from fraternizing with them, associating with them in an attempt to prevent assimilation? And people who you drink with are people who you're going to assimilate with. And there is that statement that comes up a little bit in the Talmud. And then there's the other way of understanding the wine prohibition, that it's because of fear of imbibing substances that were involved with idolatry. The last two chapters of the Masechet are dedicated to the wine prohibition, but we do get a small sugya here that talks about it already. It's a very small passage. As I said, most of the material is going to be found at the end of the Masechet. It is exceptionally rich in terms of like the intensity with which Jews studied this material throughout the ages, because the wine prohibition was something that was very realistically problematic to them in the Middle Ages. But we'll save most of that for when we learn it in the end of the Masechet. So it begins a very exciting portion of the chapter, a very interesting, dynamic, rich portion of the chapter, and we'll talk about it more as we go ahead.